Well, hi everybody and welcome to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. My name is Rob Evans and I'm your weight loss coach, health strategist and internationally published author, helping take your mindset, your life, your body, your business from where you are to where it is that you want to be. And I am incredibly excited about our guest today. She is an international speaker. She's an award-winning author of Unstoppable You. She's a decorated athlete. She has over 60 million views on YouTube. She's been featured by Oprah, Today, Cosmopolitan, the Huffington Post, Marie Claire and our magazines. Please, everybody, be upstanding and welcome the amazing, unstoppable Tracy Smiths. I feel we should be, dancing for a little. Nice work. I love it.
Oh, it's fun.
So Tracy, welcome and thank you so much for joining me all the way from Toronto, Canada. I'm in Melbourne. We're at opposite. I don't know if you drilled a hole right through. We're kind of at opposite ends of the day, and I'm 10 p.m. at night. You're 8 a.m. in the morning. So tell me, Tracy, what's COVID life like in Canada at the moment?
Well, it's certainly turned our world upside down. So it's maybe appropriate we're on each other's end of the earth right now.
Yeah.
And how connecting that everybody is for the first time experiencing something together. Yes. And they say we're better together, and it's a horrific way to be better together. It's really reminding me of my trekking days, which is kind of funny. Okay. You know, when I'm climbing and rappelling and stuff like that, you're really alone, right? And so I'm in my condo alone. There's nobody left of me, nobody right of me. It's kind of like when I'm hanging off a cliff, there's nobody around. But sometimes you feel like you're all alone. You're like your deepest, scariest spot. Like, oh no, what about finances? What about love life? What about family and friends and safety? And that, you know, you're hanging out there all alone on this cliff and there's nobody around, nobody left of you, nobody right of you. But I always forget, right in those crucial, deepest, scariest moments. And that's usually when the person that's on my lifeline, on my belay line, right, on my safety line, it shouts out, Tracy, you okay? You know, like if you pause unexpectedly. And it's kind of like exactly what happened today, Rob. Yeah. Right when I was all alone, I got this fabulous email from Mr. Toughness himself. And he's like, hey, Rob, or hey, Trace, how's it going? And I'm like, Rob, what a magical moment to hear perfectly from you. Yeah. So it is such an honor to be with you today. And it's like, what's life like in COVID? Well, it's just like when I'm climbing, every now and then those lifelines shout out like you.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Beautifully said. And tell me, are you locked down in Canada? What's it like over there?
We're different in Ontario. So Toronto's in Ontario in Canada, and different places in Canada are at various stages. So some places are still in lockdown in stage 2, and Toronto's kind of one of them.
Okay.
And I'm lucky as a lady. My hair just gets longer, and you go for it.
Mine too.
Yours too. I like it. It looks good on you, Rob. You know, you might be able to do dreads really soon.
Yeah.
I think it'll go with the suit, right? Like you pull off anything. I love your pink tie. You're wearing one of my colors.
Thank you.
And I should have been wearing a pink dress. I often do. So I feel like you're wearing that for me, my wonderful friend. Thank you.
Well, this is my very special tie because this one, I know I'll pick up on the camera. This one was signed personally by Brooke Shields.
Ooh,
because I got to interview her in 2018. And so this is my special, apart from the interview, my special memento. Her hands touch this tie. So I wear it for all my female special guests. So.
Oh, I love that. Can our viewers see us, Rob?
Yes, they can.
Yes. Can you put your tie on this side of the screen? Am I touching your window? Is this your window?
Hang on.
I don't know
how we do that. Hang on. Go the other way again. There. Hang on. I got to hold it up higher. I think. There we go.
I love it. This is so great. Thank you. Now I get to say I kind of touched it for fun too. But it's like your powerful woman tie. You
Yeah,
got
that's
powerful
right.
Tracy, unstoppable Tracy,
That's right.
Thunder Tracy, and Thunder fabulous Brooke Shields.
It certainly is a challenging time, isn't it? I mean, we're actually in stage 4 lockdown here
Oh,
in
so
my
that's good
hometown
news.
here. So what that looks like briefly for us is that we can't travel more than 5 kilometres from our home. We're allowed out once a day for exercise, up to 1 hour maximum, and we're allowed to go to the supermarket once a day.
Once
So
a day.
you've got to make sure you get what you want in that one trip. There, a few people are allowed to work. So obviously I can work, like doing what we're doing here. But I can't. I have a studio where I have people come and train and stuff. Can't use that. The stage prior to this was I could work with people in a public park. Not allowed to do that either. So a lot of industry is being shut down. So all retail is shut here. Some construction is still open, and so it's really, really grim. So it's supposed to be opening in another 4 weeks, but I don't think it will because their numbers are still quite high. So
they're trying to give you hope, but the delay is happening.
Yeah, everybody seems to be hanging their hat on a vaccine and hoping that that's coming soon. But who knows when that is. So Tracy, what I wanted to talk about with you today was a whole range of different things, and I'm sure we could talk for a few hours here.
Yes.
I can just see the ear. I saw an ear of your beautiful dog there.
And you might hear squeak, squeak.
I heard that just before. He's playing with his toy. Yeah.
He's got so many regular toys. I guess it's only fair to your viewers to know who's joining.
Oh, look at that. Oh, he's so cute.
He had a haircut yesterday.
Yeah, he looks like he's been trimmed. Yeah,
yes.
cute.
And so part of our lockdown is I'm still able to I had to stay in my car. And the groomer came to the window of my car.
Grabbed the dog, shaved it, and gave it back.
But she did kidnap my dog. She stole my dog out the window. But that's
cute.
like a COVID purchase.
Yes, a COVID puppy. Yeah, nice. They're good companions, the pets. We take them for granted. So now's a really great time, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is actually not a bad segue into what I wanted to ask you, because I've been talking to, certainly, I use the word fatigue because we've been shut down since March. We opened again for 16 days and then we shut down again to where we are now.
Wow.
So it's been really tough on people. And there's always a couple of different ways of looking at it. But if I give you the glass half empty view at the moment, so obviously this is the worst thing that you and I have probably experienced in terms of globally in our lifetime. I mean, it's been 75 years since World War II, just had its anniversary, the end of it just this week. People are, there's so much uncertainty, doubt, there's pain, there's heartache, there's loss of income, there's stress in the household because we're homeschooling here. So I have to homeschool my 2 girls and they normally sit right next to me while they're doing it. And it's like, man, can I have a little bit of space? They're like right here.
Yeah.
It's like,
okay. Like they're part of the podcast in the background with their
yeah. They're not with me at the moment, so it's fine. But just the isolation, hence the pets. I've been speaking to a couple of my clients lately, and they don't have partners, they don't have children, and if it wasn't for their pets, they would really, really go and go quite crazy. Yeah, it's really quite tough. So what I wanted to ask you was, I wanted to talk about adversity and challenge with you. What would be, and I've read a lot about you and, watched a number of your TED Talks. I didn't mention that. You've done a few TED Talks as well, and that's an amazing achievement in itself. I want you to go back and tell me what your first memory of adversity is for you.
I grew up in affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And the reason that's relevant to the story is that all of the land lots were kind of surrounded with gravel, right? We didn't have paved driveways or anything. Yep. And it's like the worst plot of land at the time kind of thing. It was a housing project that they just built. So it's like on these hills.
Yeah.
And so some of your folks may or may not know I'm a 4-way amputee, right? I'm missing my hand, missing an arm, missing a hand, but also missing both of my legs above knees. So you can imagine a hill and gravel is like super tough in my life.
Sandpaper.
Yeah, totally, right? Walking on my stumps, walking on my knees over that gravel. So I'm sitting on a blanket on my front lawn and just sort of playing with myself. And there's some kids on another lawn, on another little hill across the gravel. And I'm like trying to wave them over and say, come, come. And these kids, one of them says to the others, he looks at me and he's like, oh, ignore her. She's weird.
Yeah.
Don't talk to her. And of course, so I start to cry, about a 5-year-old or so. Taking a guess. I don't know how old are you for your youngest memory? So I think it's about 5-ish.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm in school yet, but it could be the summer, maybe between kindergarten and grade 1. And so my mom, she opens the front door to check on me at the house, and she finds me crying, and she's like, oh, what's wrong? And I said, oh, well, I asked those kids to come play and they said some mean stuff, right? And I'm crying, and she's like, oh, well, how's that working for you? And she shut the door. And it's so funny because you're a dad, right? This is what all of the moms and dads do. They all do this funny giggle, right? Like this knowing giggle, right? But and then anybody that doesn't have kids or that are younger or are kids, right? When you do it in a school or a university or 20 somethings, they're all like, oh, like, I can't believe your mom shut the door. But the parents, they do that funny giggle, that knowing giggle, right? And so at first I was kind of like, oh, my mom is so
dare you?
Yeah, I can't believe it. And then then I realized my mom's not mean, right? I got the light bulb, right? I realized, okay, I have every right in the world to be crying because it's no fun being bullied.
Yeah.
Right. Or what I could do instead is I could cry and do something about it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I kind of looked around and like, okay, wipe away the tears and put on my brave face and stand up tall as I could. And I see this, not a rollerblade, like a skateboard on the road there. And so remember, my legs are off.
Yeah.
My puppy's trying so hard. He brought me his squeaky chicken. He brought me his peeping fox. And now he's brought me his little bell, which is a cat ball for your cat. But he loves it because he's small. He's
like, why won't you play with me? What are you doing?
Yeah, he wants to be part of this.
Yeah.
So I see the skateboard on the road and my legs are off. So I roll down my front lawn. And I like to say I borrowed this skateboard, and I have one arm. So I'm missing my legs and my arms, but I do have one arm that's a little longer than the other. So I take my longish arm and I sit on the skateboard because both of my legs end above my knees. And I skateboard over to my neighbor's lawn.
Yeah.
And then I roll up the lawn and I get there and all of the kids are like, ugh. Right? Like they all have these big saucer eyes. And I don't know if it's because, and just for fun, I'm showing you now, I've got a chicken on my knee. Like he just keeps bringing me different toys. It's so funny. And they've all got these big saucer eyes. And I don't know if it's because, this girl with no arms and no legs have rolled up the front lawn.
Yeah.
Or if it's because I've, ignored what the bully said. And the bully's like, stay away. And I didn't.
Yes.
But I do know that if I do not say something right now and impact this environment, right, all of these faces, this conversation is going to go south really quick, right? I want to speak before the bully speaks because I don't know what I'm going to say if he speaks. So I just deep breath and I stand up as tall as I can. And I'm kind of like, hi, I'm Tracy. Can I play?
Yeah, beautiful.
And of course, I didn't get off that easy, right? The bully had something to say, but at least I took him off guard.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what to say. So then he tries to think of the worst thing he can. And he says, well, the new kids always it. Right? And so in my head, I'm kind of like, I don't know how I'm going to do tag without my legs on. And how am I going to play, hide and seek? Because they can go anywhere and I haven't got my legs on.
Yeah.
But I do know, kids are like, you can play or you can't play. We're playing tag. What are you playing, right?
Yeah.
I can't come up with all these excuses. I gotta just play the game. So even though I don't know how I'm going to play the game, I just said, okay. And, none of the kids ran off that grassy patch. Nobody ran in the gravel. Nobody ran into the road. Everybody stayed and they played hide and seek in the bushes that were on that lawn, and they played tag right there on the grass. So I had no problem. I could run on my knees on the grass and I could roll around on the grass.
Yes.
And what's really weird is, propel forward to 1998 when Air Canada and the whole world, once again, Quantum in the Australia and Air Canada in Canada and United Airlines in the USA, right? The different airlines around the world, everybody was going bankrupt because Ryanair out of Ireland have come in with this new model of, discount airlines, no service airline, right? And they totally busted up all these airlines. And so they are all going bankrupt. And so it's like, then what do you do? And so they brought me in to negotiate with all of the unions for a new employee engagement. And so there's the pilots and there's the cargo staff and there's the ramp guys and gals, but most of them men. And there was the flight attendant world, right? So there was all these different unions. There was 5 different unions, reservation agents for the call centers. Everybody worked in different parts of the airline, the customer service agents from the airport front desk. So there's the 5 unions, and there's Air Canada unions, and they're being forced into a merger with Canadian Airlines. So they've got their 5 union reps. So there's these 10 people in a room, and they're all in suits looking very smart and schwanky like yourself, Rob. You look like a lot of the pilots out there, which is kind of fun. They never know that you got this workout gym in the background, getting everybody fit and strong and tough mentally and physically, right? So these pilots, and one of these pilots turns to one of the ramp guys, and they're all kind of like on edge because their world is changing. It's not like what they thought anymore because they're being forced in this merger, and who's going to be laid off and which airlines are going to, you can tell I'm on a different time zone because the sun's coming up and now it's giving me sunbeams on my face.
Yeah,
so you can tell it's early morning in Canada.
Very nice.
And so that's the same thing that happened. This pilot turns to this cargo guy and he says, and looks at me, who just steps out of an elevator with my artificial legs. And he's like, oh, great. Today is going to be a total waste of time. And he could have been talking about me. And that's what I made it mean in that moment. But he also could have been talking about anything, right?
Yeah.
It's funny how our head goes to, oh, about me.
They're talking about me, yeah.
Yeah. And he could have been, or he might not have been. But that sentence is actually empty and meaningless until I give it some meaning, right? And I made it mean that he was talking about me. I was going to be the total waste of time.
Yeah.
And I just totally time warped into that little girl on that front lawn again. It's funny, like, what is your first moment of that kind of pressure and that anxiety or that, who knows what kind of headspace like we were all in with COVID. And it brought me back. And so in that moment, I did the same thing. I'm like, okay. I took a deep breath and I said, hello, I'm Tracy. Shall we get started? And just walked into that room with that fake confidence, right?
Yeah.
And they were kind of taken aback. And we did fabulously. Like there was a ton of negotiations in all sorts of organizational structural departments, right? You got IT and HR and finance and all of the different worlds. But we were the first to have a breakthrough, because I'm the no and O just means KNOW, right? Being born with no hands and no legs, people tell me no all the time. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you can't sit up. No, you can't walk. No, you can't swim. No, you can't skydive or scuba dive or fly an airplane or be the first four-way amputee to climb the Himalayas, right? And or sail with big strong beefcakes like you, Rob, in the sailboat world. I was in Melbourne, Australia, in a World Cup regatta with like 27 men with big pipes. You may or may not be able to tell, world, underneath that suit of Rob's with his big muscular pipes. And there was only 3 women, 27 men, 3 women, and everybody had their hands and their legs.
Yeah.
And I was there at that World Cup regatta, and I kicked butt at that World Cup regatta, right?
Yeah.
And even then they were like, she can't participate, right? And they boycotted me. They tried to get me out of that race, and they boycotted all of the adaptions. I had some duct tape and a pool noodle, and they said that's not one class design, even though they could use duct tape and a pool noodle if they wanted to. But they said, that's not one class. So I just took it off the boat, and I said, okay, my boat's just like yours, right? And I competed in a boat exactly the same as theirs with no adaptions. And so I'm really used to, right, since 4 years old, people saying, no, you can't play.
Yes.
But I was lucky because it taught me a way to counteroffer, and how do I get in the game?
Yeah,
in or as in the playground, right?
So I was going to ask you what was your first memory of being unstoppable? But was it that same moment? Really, I mean, we don't really know what unstoppable means at 5, but obviously that was a defining moment for you then, and then in 1998, you probably still draw on it from time to time. But when do you think you just said to yourself, do you know what? There's nothing that I can't do.
No, so it's kind of unusual right now in Canada. I don't know in your world, but in Canada, the first day of school is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But it's still up in the air, right?
Yeah.
There's still, my dog is trying to join us to find out what's going on. He wants to play with the ball of the microphone. And so we're kind of like, we're going back to school. We're not going back to school. We're going to go remote. We're not going to go remote, right? We're going to give people the choice, right? It yo-yos every day. It switches up, which is interesting. And so my first day of school, all summer, my mom told me that I get to go to school today, right? And I'm all excited. I know not all kids are excited, but they were pretty much excited in kindergarten. Yeah. And so we're like face to face with the principal, and I'm big smiles at him, and mom's smiling at him. And he's looking at me with the same eyes as the kids on the front lawn, right? With these big saucers. And he's kind of like, I'm sorry, Tracy can't go to this school. And I wish I could show you, the hair on my arm is standing up right now. Yeah. So, like when you have like a car accident, or you have a big fight with your life partner or your brother, your sister, or you get laid off, like one of those big, massive memories that every time you think of that car accident, your stomach is like,
churns.
Oh, yeah. And so every time I remember that principal, my stomach just went, whoop, it just flipped right over, and the hair on my arm stood up, right? It's totally creepy every time I remember that. And, I was like, my mom told me that I get to go to school today. And then I was like, that was what was in my head. And then I'm like, my mom told me that I get to go to school today, right? So it's like a regroup blind faith. Like, I know he's saying no, but she said I get to go. So I'm like ready. Okay, mom's gonna take him on, right? And I'm expected. You're a dad of 2 girls. Were you kind of feeling like, what do you mean Tracy doesn't get to go to school? Like, were you ready to take on that principal for me? Probably, right?
Yes.
You're such a difference maker, right? You are, and me, we're ordinary people, and you do
Yeah.
these extraordinary things.
That's right. And you want your kids to be able to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, right. And that's sort of like, it's almost parents that give you that first positive change moment where you become a difference maker in their name, right?
Yeah.
Instead of your own name, at least in their name.
Yes.
But my mom, she didn't become all mama bear, right?
Yeah.
She didn't attack him. She just said, how come? With like the friendliest face ever. She said, how come? Right? And she didn't say why, because why, when we ask people why, it puts them on defense, right? It's like
Yeah.
attack. She just very politely said, how come? With a smile. And so now that invites him. He doesn't feel defensive at all. And she just says, how come? And so he, not defensive, says, well, Tracy's missing her hands and she's probably not going to be able to tie her shoelaces. And in the 70s, when I went to school, there were no support workers or, educational assistants. What do they call them in Australia?
Teacher's aid.
Teacher's aid. There were no teacher's aides, right? In the 70s, it was one teacher and there's 30 kindergarten kids,
Yes.
35-year-olds running around.
Yes.
And he said, and Tracy's got no legs. She probably needs help in the washroom. So this one teacher's not going to be able to leave those 35-year-olds to help Tracy.
Mm.
So then my mom says, I keep waiting for the sun to rise a little further so it's not so bright. I feel that many years older with the sun reflecting on my wrinkles.
This way.
And so my mom says, I totally understand. Right? She gets it, right? You kind of get it now. As a teacher, I get it, right?
Mm.
How do you manage 30 kids and one 4-way amputee? Of course, you can't leave them.
Yeah.
So she's like, no problem. I totally understand. But then she counter offers and she says, can you give me 1 week to try to find another school more suited for Tracy? And if it doesn't work out, no problem. But since we're here today, can we just try?
Mm. Smart.
And so the principal's like, okay. Says if they try, they'll see that it's not set up for success. They'll see for themselves. So let them try it so that they see the failure so they know why they have to leave on Friday, right?
Yes.
And so my mom says, thank you very much. And we go around the side of the school where the kindergarten kids get in. My school was Burner Trail. My principal was Mr. Wistow. And we go around to the side of the school and like the whole playground is full of kids. Everybody's waiting outside for the recess bell to go off, right? You wait for the bell to go off to say you can go inside. My mom, now she gets the same face as that bully and the principal. She looks at the schoolyard with like sheer panic on her face and she looks down at me wondering, just so you all know, I now have another toy. My poor puppy really wants to play with us all, like all of you listeners and watchers watch again that want to join in and play on that playground with me on that playground day. And she looks at me with panic and she's like, oh, and she collapses to her knees on the cement steps. And remember, like I'm 5 years old. I'm like, how come my mom's on her knees in front of everybody? Right? Yeah. I don't know what she knows. I don't know that if I don't make it outside for recess, I don't get to stay at that school. And so, of course, my mom, just like she looked the principal eye to eye, and I looked the bully eye to eye, my mom got on her knees so that she could look at me, short, 5-year-old Tracy, eye to eye. And so she's on her knees and she grabs my arms, you know, that parental 5-finger arm hold sometimes that you parents have. And she's holding that 5-finger grip and she's holding me. I'm going to simulate with the camera here kind of thing. And she says, Tracy, it's really important that you and everybody's included. Nobody left behind. Especially you. Well, I'm 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea why my mom is so intense.
Yeah, you just want to play.
I just want to go play. The principal was watching, kind of like you're the principal today in the suit and tie. I don't think my principal ever wore a pink tie, though. Certainly not a Brooke Shields touch
not
tie.
in the 70s, no.
It's so great, but he did look like you. He looked a lot like you, which is so fun, Mr. Winstow. Like a really friendly face, just those welcoming eyes. He didn't want to say no, right?
Mm.
And he was looking down at me and my mom on her knees, and he heard the whole thing. He saw my mom holding my shoulders and saying nobody left behind. And so now the principal's eyes are like all welled up.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want me to go on Friday. So he's so excited after hearing my mom tell me what she told me that fast forward to recess time, and he runs outside. And he runs outside looking for me everywhere. I'm not outside. And he's like, oh, give her 5 minutes. She's just learning how to tie her shoelaces.
Yeah.
5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by. He can't find me anywhere. And that recess bell finally goes off.
Mm.
I never made it outside. The principal's heart is in his stomach now. He's like, what am I going to say to Tracy's mom? And so he runs inside to find my teacher because he's got to figure out how he's going to explain it, right? He has no idea how he's going to face her and say, I'm sorry, she can't stay on Friday. And so he asked my teacher, he says, couldn't Tracy tie her shoelaces? And the teacher's all confused. She's like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, Tracy was the first one to tie her shoelaces. Well, then how come Tracy wasn't outside? And she says, oh, her little friend couldn't tie her shoelaces. I'm putting you on the spot, Rob. Do you remember what my mom said?
She said no one gets left behind.
Yeah. Thank you for being audience participation since we can't get your listeners in. Yeah, she said no one left behind. It turns out none of those 30 kids could tie their shoelaces. So by the time I tied 30 shoelaces,
recess was over.
Yeah, recess was over.
Yeah.
Like, so how come the only student with no hands was the only student required to be able to tie those shoelaces?
Yeah.
And that makes me think of COVID. It's kind of like, okay, my job is to be on stages, 20 countries in 2019, right? Before COVID, I was already in 20 cities in Europe, North America, not just in Ontario, 20 cities around the world before amazing. COVID.
Yeah.
And now I'm quarantined in my home.
Yeah.
And my after so much time in COVID, I haven't had my legs on for a lot of it, and now my legs don't fit. And so,
because your legs swell up, do they?
Well, they're actually muscle atrophy, right? I need that exercise in to keep my muscles from all the walking. It's taking a step with artificial legs is 7 times more. Like 700% more capacity of muscle use than your thigh muscle of just taking a step, right? I'm always carrying around these 20-pound weights on both my legs, right?
Yes.
And then the balancing and all of, because it's all 4 limbs, it's not one leg, and because it's above knees, right? There's also different energy there. So by walking around with no legs on in my apartment, I've messed up the shape of my legs. But I've tried to stay healthy and fit and tough. So I'm still doing really good with my shakes, my healthy shakes. Right now it's just a water, but it's ready and healthy food, watching my calorie intake versus my calorie output.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've lost weight during COVID. Lots of people are gaining weight, but I've tried to just really focus, right? And so I didn't want that to happen. But now my legs don't really fit, and the finger splint on my hand that helps me hold things isn't really fitting, right?
Okay.
And why am I telling you this? It was kind of related, walking and kindergarten. So I'm out there and all those shoes. And so, you know, in COVID, we're all kind of like, we feel like, well, how am I going to go to the grocery store with no legs? Right? I didn't have a power chair. And how are you going to reinvent your business? How am I going to go to all these countries when I can't travel? And we're all, and company and companionship when I live all alone.
Yeah.
But now I have a puppy. So it's sort of the same kind of revisited feeling. And what I learned that day at 5 years old, which is so great, I'm so lucky, right? A lot of us, we go to school and somebody says you're too short, or that's for girls, or that's for boys, or you're too fat, or you wear glasses. And it doesn't really matter if you're black or white, tall or small, with a disability, without a disability, you know, there's a place for each and every single one of us, right? Yeah. I just wanted to go play.
Yeah.
I didn't intend on being the shoelace leader, right? Tying 30 shoelaces. I just wanted to play. And you know, kudos to all of your listeners, because they're still in the game, right? They are figuring out the right lifelines during COVID. They are listening in to Rob here for that toughness during COVID, right? That's my lifeline. I'm here to be tougher with Rob, and it's better together sharing a story, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I got to learn, and that principal learned.
Yeah.
You know, no, at 5 years old, I'm like, oh, the principal said, no, I'm not allowed. And that just means KNOW. He just didn't know
what you could do.
Yes. And I didn't know KNOW, right?
Yeah.
And so now every time somebody says to me, no, I'm not interested in your book, or no, I don't need your webinar, or no, you know, we're not looking to sell a house right now, or no, you can't swim or sail or fly an airplane or scuba dive at an advanced level, right? I know that just means KNOW, right? No doesn't stop me.
Yeah.
It's just a word. It just means KNOW, right? It washes off my back. But I'm lucky that I was born a 4-way amputee, because it forced me to confront those naysayers.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop me, right? It becomes unstoppable. So I'm really lucky that instead of learning I was fat or short or a girl, I got to learn that no just means KNOW. And I bring that into now, like busting Uber into Canada, right? I supported facing City Hall in Toronto.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that. Yeah. Tell me, what do you think like the physical you has created your mindset, as opposed to it wouldn't matter whether you are able-limbed or whatever you would be? Like, I know you can't live life parallel, but do you feel that? Like, because of the way that you've been born, that has created you to be as strong, because you've had to overcome challenge and adversity from 5 years old.
It's from Mr. Toughness, it is a tough question to be super honest about. You know, for over 30 years, I would have said, yeah, absolutely, right? And all of my coaches, like I went to Paralympic trials for both skiing, downhill, and for sailing.
Wow.
And there's like a mindset, there's a way of being, right? When you're being unstoppable. And it's kind of like the Brooke Shields and basketball players and movie stars and millionaires and billionaires and, you know, super tough people like yourself, Rob, people. The only difference between super successful people and those that aren't is one more try, right? So Rob and Tracy and Brooke Shields and millionaires and billionaires and basketball stars, all of those people, Walt Disney, right?
Yeah.
He went bankrupt 9 times before he became Walt Disney. All of us are just really good at failure, right?
Yeah.
We just failed, okay, again, fail, okay, again, right? Like we're just really good. So if you're good at failing, you know, you're right exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
Because it's a skill to be good at failing and restarting and just get back at it and just be unstoppable until you succeed, right? That's the only difference.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like being born this way, I mean, really influenced that for me. I didn't know I was born with no arms and no legs, right? I didn't
No, any
really
different.
understand why those kids on the lawn didn't want me to play,
Yeah.
right? So when I said, can I play? Like I wasn't being a hero. I just wanted to play.
Yes.
Right. And it's only, and even in school, because they grew up with me and because I tied 30 shoelaces, I had 30 kindergarten allies all the way through elementary school.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I went into high school where, you know, you get 6 feeder schools from all your elementary schools. What do you call it in Australia? Elementary?
A primary school and secondary
Primary school.
school. Yeah.
And
So
secondary.
kinder, primary school, secondary school.
So it wasn't until kinder and primary school, they all feed into the secondary school or the high school, as we call it in North America. When you feed into those secondary school, that I even knew I was kind of different.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't until the first high school dance where I kind of, oh, right. Like maybe the boys are, and my gender preference is boys, but it's, you know, it doesn't matter whether you like boys or girls and girls or boys and boys or somewhere in between. But my particular, I identify as she and my gender preference is boys. And it was, so this first school dance is, I wonder if the boys are going to ask me to dance with no arms and no legs kind of thing. But then that just gave me another conversation to figure it out and have that toughness of, well, you know, it wasn't an appropriate conversation, but the teenager in me was kind of like, well, they're not going to ask me to dance. And so I had to figure out a way. And I'm like, well, okay, so I'm not going to the school dance to dance with boys. I guess I'm going to go to the school dance to just be with my girlfriends and have a fun time. Yeah. And so when I walked in there, I walked into the school dance with my eyes up, right? And I was making eye contact with the boys, with the girls, with the teachers. You know, I just walked in like, hi, how's it going? And I wasn't. Whereas all my girlfriends that I was hanging out with, they were all like looking down, right? Because they were all scared about being asked to dance too. And they were like looking down and not making eye contact. And so the boys made that mean that they don't want to dance. And so the first person to get asked to dance
was Tracy.
Was me, because I had my eyes up, right? Like I was like hi, and it was just like a friendly dance, right?
Yes.
So, which was the last thing I expected on that planet, was that I was going to be the first one to dance that day. Yes. Right? And it totally surprised me. In fact, I have a romantic story of, it was a Halloween dance. In October was my first school dance, and the guy had a Zorro mask on, a black mask on, and he had a black hat on, right? And he looked very cool with his black vest on. Yes. And so, and he danced with me, and I was the first one to get asked to dance by Zorro, and he kissed me at the end of the dance. Even
look at you.
Not appropriate.
So how old were you?
All, right? I have no idea who he is. I spent my next 5 years of secondary school wondering who Zorro was. And I still don't know. I put it in my book. And I was secretly hoping, you know, after all these years,
Zorro would reach out to you.
Zorro would be like, it was me, right? But I reunited with thousands of people from high school when, you know, now that I want to be humble. And I was just going to say, now that I'm famous, and that sounds cheeky, but you know, that kindergarten story's got over 1 million views. Yeah. I can't walk through an airport in Australia or Singapore or Toronto. Like I can't go anywhere in the world without people like, oh, Unstoppable Tracy. Like people recognize me everywhere, not just in my own neighborhood now, which is pretty phenomenal. But so all of my high school, I practically reunited with everybody from high school. I've gone from 700 friends on Facebook to 15,000. Personal friends, and then on my fan page it's even more, right? But it's unbelievable who I've reunited with, but I have not reunited with Zorro.
Not that you know. Maybe you
Not that I
have.
know, not that they've confessed. Maybe secretly with Rob while he lived in Toronto. Did you ever live in Toronto, Rob?
No, I haven't been to Canada. It is on my list of places to go to, though.
Oh, well, so you and your girls definitely have an open invitation.
Yeah, if we ever get to travel again, hey.
We will. Positive thinking, mister. And it
We
will
will.
happen when it's meant to happen,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
We just need all those turtles to come back and all those, wildlife and the bees and all those things to rejuvenate.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of nature's way of saying it's time for us to just take some time out and replenish the seas and the nature and everything. It's really that's the thing about COVID. I on this show, I recorded a podcast earlier today and one yesterday, and I've been kind of theming around what's going on with COVID. And it's very easy to look at all the downside, but I see it as a really beautiful opportunity. And yes, I'm seeing less people physically, and looking at a screen the whole day and watching people's form, and sometimes it's one or two people, sometimes there's multiple screens and you're scanning through and looking at what they're doing and everything. And my kids, I was saying before, I don't know whether we're recording or not for this part, but my kids like literally sit right next to me, one there, one here. Sometimes the blooming cats are sitting here, one's on the back of my chair and I'm sitting in the front of the chair.
And all the toys. Got me another toy.
And you could say, oh man, I can't get as much done. It's frustrating. We're homeschooling. The kids will ask me questions. And I'm like, man, I don't remember the answers to any of those things. But the other side is I get to spend more time with them. They enjoy it. I get to get more of an insight as to what they're learning and how they communicate with their friends. My girls are 13 and just turned 13 and 15. We're becoming closer, and I'm connecting more deeply with people.
Yes.
And I probably wouldn't have reached out to you because my schedule is so busy, and this has opened up some time. And I said, you know what, this second shutdown, I want to make sure that I connect with more people from around the world, and have more meaningful connections with my clients, those that are really in need, and those that I see a few times a week, and those that either can't afford to keep seeing me at the moment or whatever. It's just about that single touch that you might have with somebody that really has a big difference in potentially their life or their day. And I was speaking with somebody the other day, and they said, I have two podcast shows. One's called Rob Evans 365, and obviously this one. And somebody just said to me the other day, I listened to your podcast and it really helps me. I listen to it first thing in the morning. It really motivates me. And sometimes, when you're in such a habit, I'm up to I think tomorrow's episode 783.
Woo! Way to go. You were a trendsetter, an early adopter.
On the other show. And sometimes you just do things and you forget that you are actually having an impact. Sometimes I think there's a very small audience, and sometimes you don't realize that there's actually a bigger audience than you think. And because you don't always get a lot of feedback, what it's like when you're in business, you're your self-driver and all that kind of stuff, and you don't necessarily realize the impact that you have on people's lives. And I likened it to, I don't know whether you've ever tried golf. Have you ever tried golf? Yeah. Golf is one of those frustrating sports, and you can be playing for 18 holes and it gets to that last putt that you sink, and that's what keeps you coming back. Yeah. And because it's like, I love golf because as frustrating it is, that's what keeps you going. And sometimes that feedback is a bit like that. It's like, I know I'm doing this for a purpose, but the life of an entrepreneur, of a business person, can be very isolating and very lonely.
Yes.
And I've made a commitment to just connect with more people and help more people. That's why you know, that's why your message is so powerful as well, because you can tell that, like, you're so passionate about it, and it's like it's kind of like your spine, like
Yeah.
health and fitness and wellness, and sharing that with people is my spine. It's just, you know, so fundamental.
Well,
Um,
and so with your spine is that feedback that you're looking for, right? The
mm,
feedback, your back, your spine is feeding you, and you got to nourish it, and you're feeding your soul, and your back is giving you that strength. Your
yes.
feedback, your spine. I love that.
I did want to ask you about coaching, Tracy, and I guess the importance that you place on coaching, and perhaps you could just give us a few examples of how you've used coaching throughout your life to this point.
Yes. So, in the athlete world, right? Like as a kid, you have your coach in school, and then when I was doing sailing, you get your provincials, right? Doing provincial skiing. I was on the Ontario Alpine race team, had this great coach, and she's still with me. She used to be with me on every start gate when I'm skiing or anything super scary. But now I even hear that local provincial Ontario coach in my ear whenever, like, you got this and you've trained for this and you can do this, right? Like she
Yes.
still is a voice in my head when I'm at a go time of something that's completely panicky, right? Like maybe you facing Brooke Shields just before you go in. That would have been a time that I heard that in my ear, would have been
Yes.
right before I spoke to Brooke Shields,
Yes.
which is interesting. And when I became like Paralympic trialist, now I'm competing with people internationally around the world, I had to make sure to do anything and everything possible to be with a gold Olympic level coach, right? And I figured,
Yeah.
okay, North America, who is a gold Olympian? And the only one there was this one man, Magnus Lidgedal, was the only gold Olympian in all of North America. So I gave up everything in my home, my bed, my couch. I put it all online and tried to sell it for some money. And if it didn't fit in my car, I got rid of it or I donated it. And I drove down and I lived out of my car, hiding in this boatyard for this gold Olympic coach. And he wanted nothing to do with me for like 3 months.
Mm.
And so like every morning, 5:30 a.m., because I'm sleeping in my car, eating Cheerios, hiding out in his boatyard, I'd be like washing his boats to try to get 2 minutes with him.
Mm.
It was kind of like, my mom with the principal, she didn't say, she can tie her shoelaces. She didn't say that, because when she said, how come? He was worried about being stuck with me as a principal, right?
Yeah.
So she needed to say, oh, no problem. If it doesn't work out, we'll go to another school, right? She spoke to his listening. And, what I was with Magnus, the gold Olympian, I was like, hi, I'm Unstoppable Tracy, and I want to pursue my dreams, me, right? I wasn't about Magnus's listening.
Yeah.
And so when I figured out what Magnus needed was washing boats and waxing boats and repairing boats, right? When I figured out he needed somebody to run around for him, that's what I did, right? I was trying to speak to his listening, but I did whatever it took to get this gold Olympic high performance athlete. But I don't know why, as an entrepreneur, I didn't think that I needed that same entrepreneur life coach in life, or relationship coach, right? How come I didn't do that in life?
Yes.
I got it with sailing. I understood it with skiing. I got it with sport, right? Or when I climbed the Himalayas, I got myself a guide from the Annapurna region that was really good at knowing that region in the Himalayas, right? I didn't trek that alone. I earned independence with the right lifeline,
Yeah.
right? And so it took me a long time. It took me till 2017. And then I got myself a superstar millionaire to be the one to be my business life coach.
Yes.
And he took me from a $10,000 a year athlete income level to 5 times that in 5 months,
Yeah.
and 100,000 in that year. And then I doubled that in 2018, and then I doubled that in 2019.
Yes.
And so 2019 was like unbelievable, mind blowing to me, 2 years after getting that high performance coach.
Yes.
So I think it's really important. And and people are taking on coaching right now, which is incredible. But I highly recommend, like, if you're a coach, you better be walking the talk, right? Like, are you a coach with a coach?
Yes.
Right? No, don't be a coach to others and not be leveraging the services of a high performance coach yourself.
Yes.
Somebody succeeding and thriving at a higher level than you. So
Yeah.
I coaching is a really kind of got me on a hot topic, because it's so true that we know it in sport, but we forget it in life and in business. And that
Yeah.
when we are coaches, we forget that we still need the coach for coaches
Yes.
out there. And
Yeah.
that's who Rob is, right? Rob
Yeah,
is
that's right.
that lifeline.
That's
And
right.
I think it's incredible that, like, you and I are two peas in a pod. And I'm so glad. I'm sorry it took COVID for us to refuel our phenomenal friendship, because when we are face to face, like, the energy is phenomenal, right? I
Yeah.
adore you, Rob, and I highly recommend Rob,
No, that's
because
great.
he is
Thank
clearly walks the talk of toughness.
you.
And so I'm honored to be on your show today, and I am so kind of excited that COVID has brought us back together again,
Yeah.
because I always feel super energized when I'm around you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And likewise, I'm honored to have you here in this conversation. Um, just on the coaching part with the athlete side. So you went after a gold medalist. So tell me why that was important to you, because you could have just said, oh, do you know what? I'll just go for a local club type person. What was your thinking in having a gold medalist?
So, I mean, everything's rooted in dramatic story. I was on a plane coming home during Hurricane Sandy. I was at a San Diego sailing regatta that I just got first place. And I
Right.
just found out that there were Paralympic sailing. I didn't even know it existed, because I had been busy working for Air Canada and pharmaceutical industry and all these corporate organizations. I was a big, like, award-winning leadership developer, developing others, performance coaching, stress management, conflict resolution, dealing with angry people. Like, this was my role in corporations. And I had no idea that sailing was a Paralympic sport. So I go to
Yeah.
San Diego for this recreational weekend, and I find out that there's sailing in the Paralympics, right?
Yes,
And I
please.
got a bullet, right? There was some Aussies there. There was a whole bunch of people. It was right before London 2012. And
Okay.
so, kind of like the trials. So people were flying from everywhere to get as much experience as they could before London 2012. And so I just went for recreation. And it turns out there's all these high performance sailors there. And I kicked butt. I got a bullet. And a bullet in sailing is like a first place on one of the races.
Okay.
And so I was all excited. I'm like, oh, I want to do this. And I'm flying home during Hurricane Sandy in the US. And maybe in Australia, you know or don't know, but Hurricane Sandy in the US wiped out the New York subway. It washed away homes, and, like, it flooded the subway, and it completely washed away homes, just gone in Rhode Island. And so it was very devastating hurricane in the US. And I happened to be in the air in a plane when it came through, flying from San Diego through to Toronto, which is like you pass over New York.
Mm.
And so I thought I was going to die on that airplane. And I kind of just got that distinction because I just discovered the Paralympics for sailing. I had no idea, or I would have been there, right?
Yes.
Like, if I live, I'm going to give up this corporate life and I'm going to pursue my Paralympic dream.
Yeah, good on you.
And so when I landed, I phoned a bunch of people, and they were all like, there's no way, Tracy. You're kind of an old lady in the Paralympic trials world, right? And because I was 40, and I know you all think I'm younger than 40 now, I imagine. So,
Yeah,
but I was like 40, and I was like wanting to start my dream, right?
Yeah.
And it is like, there's no way, Tracy. And you need like 10,000 hours, and you need a boat, and you need a high performance coach. There's no way. And so I kept counter offering with them. I'm like, well, imagine I had a magic wand. I know I don't, but what would it take? Right. And they all said, you would need like not just a Paralympic coach, you would need like a gold Olympian, able-bodied, meaning someone like you with arms and legs, coach, right? You would need to 7 days a week in the back pocket of a gold Olympian. Yeah. There's just no way, right? And so my reply to that was, do you know any?
Yeah.
And the name that popped up was Magnus Digital.
Yeah.
And so I just did whatever it took to get Magnus's attention. And I phoned him and I tweeted him and I emailed him, and he never replied to any of it.
Yeah.
And even like 3 months washing his boats, he only coached men, and they were mostly young, like 18, 19, 20-year-olds that had already shown gold Olympic potential. Like not working with
people that were starting out. And,
like I'm some Toronto girl.
Yeah.
And so because of the dramatic story and the urgency I felt to catch up, and it would be great to train with fellow Paralympic sailors. But so like if you want to be a basketball player and you're a female, I highly recommend you go out and train basketball with men. Right. Yeah. And if you are a local coach and you want to become an international coach, well, I highly recommend that you get out there and you offer your services with an international coach so that you get some of that exposure and experience and stretch and growth, right? To be around them and do the equivalent of washing boats and waxing for a coach, like monitor their email, support them with social media, like do some of the things in their world, do some of those things in my world so that you get what it is to be a high performance coach for the high performance coaches. And in Rob's world, right? Like if you want to be mental toughness guru, well then offer some volunteer services or some kind of bartering system to be around Rob. And even better, I had no money, 2017. And so I'd spent a lifetime of trying to save from when I was working at Air Canada and those pharmaceuticals and the Loblaws and the around the world, all of these the airlines, all of these big organizations. And so I was saving and being very thrifty with the past income, having not lived with any income while I was being an athlete pursuing my Paralympic dream, right?
Yes.
And spending, but not earning during that time very much, right? It was just pittance here or there. And so I didn't have very much money, but I did have this sacred pot of, my retirement or purchasing a home and using it. I was stealing from it to pay when I had emergencies or an important regatta to go to, important race to go to. And when I was face to face with that high performance coach and I could see the results, right? Demonstrated results, right? They demonstrated what they could do and were pretty humble about it in some ways. It was just sort of like a fact. They weren't standing there in front of Lamborghinis and fancy cars and billionaire houses, which they had. They were just sharing life experience. And you could hear the golden nuggets from the stories. I'm like, this is my Magnus Digital business.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to be part of that. And so, and he was just sharing a story. And he said, one of you is going to be on my stage. And there are thousands of you around the world that sit here and listen to this day, but only one of you is going to be on my stage as the top 1% performer. And I stood up out of my seat. Like it wasn't an invite to action, but I heard it as an invite. And I stood up.
Let me edit.
Yeah, let it be me, right? Like, and he just sort of like, it was a weird, it's like, you can sit down. That's not what I was doing, right? Like it was so funny. And I won #1 international speaker at his top 1% event. I got that role. But and what I did is I invested every single penny I had. I had 30,000 in saving. And then on top of that, I had a couple of credit cards, and I lived all of my life paying my credit cards off to zero. I never ever carried a balance on my credit cards. And so I had a really good credit rating. And on top of my savings, I also maxed out both of my credit cards to go all in.
Yeah.
And you know, I sure, just like everybody, I had the buyer's remorse. I'm like, what did I do? How
Yeah.
I
What did I
did
just
all that?
do?
I have no idea. But I
Yeah.
very quickly reframed that and said, I went all in, and so I'm going to go all in getting the results that I've invested in.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to do every single thing. And so, like when they said get media and get exposure and like whatever feedback I got out there, write a book. Like, look at what people that are successful doing. What's Tony Robbins doing? What's JT Fox doing?
Yeah.
Well, they have a book, they're international, so I better get a book, be international. Oh, their books are bestsellers. I better get my book a bestseller, right? They have lots of media coverage. So I did exactly what the people thriving did.
Yes.
And I was, so there's free ways, and you're going to get some good results, but you're going to get the equivalent of local results. But if you want to stretch and go all in, even when you're scared, and I was scared, and I went all in, and that money was paid back within 6 months and then some, right? I got my investment, no problem. Plus, I made more money on, including the expenses subtracted out. I made more money than 5 times more money than I'd made the year before.
Yeah.
Including that big investment of getting a high performance coach. And because that's what it took to be high performance, right? And then doubled after that, and then doubled after that. So it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was scary, but you go for it.
It is. It is. I think there's something in your mindset that really has to be in that place that says, you know what, I am going to go all in. I am going to go for this.
Yeah.
And I ask about the coaching with the Olympic gold medalist. I stretched myself over this last 18 months to build some more relationships with people. And an Olympic gold medalist wrote the foreword to my book. We're now really good friends, and I could literally pick up the phone right now and call her, and she would take my call. What time is it? She may not take the call right now. She might be asleep.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
And what's the one thing that gold medalists know? That's a question for you. It's a bit tricky.
It is tricky. Magnus always says, once an Olympian, always an Olympian.
That's right. And one gold medalist always knows other gold medalists. Oh. So I now have 3 Olympic gold medalists in my circle. And just recently, I had the opportunity to speak with 32 of them. 32 Olympic gold medalists, and ask them questions from, like our best swimmers in Australia to, or whether they be cyclists or taekwondo people or Louise Savage. Do you know Louise Savage?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
So unbelievable athlete in her, I don't know, I think it's 5 times world champion and Boston Marathon winner 3 times and all that kind of stuff. And now she coaches wheelchair athletes and stuff. Just lovely, lovely lady. And they're also humble.
Yeah.
The reason that I wanted to, get to, I'm obsessed with success. Hence why talking to you.
And now you add Paralympic trialists to your repertoire of medalists.
Yeah. Understanding people, the success mindset. And what's great is to see out of the 3, one of them's a current Olympic gold medalist, and she's, the Olympics should have been over by now, but she's training for next year. To see how they take their mindset from the sport out into the real world, because you don't just become an Olympic gold medalist and you're an idiot. You're not motivated. You don't have a strong mindset. Because there is so much, as you could relate to, being an elite athlete normally means you're broke.
Yep.
It's only a few athletes that get the big sponsorship deals, and it's normally after they finish. Most of them, go on the speaking circuit, and a lot of them don't know how to do that very well either. Yeah. So it's really, really tough. So when they bring that mindset out into the real world, it's really powerful. And I feel privileged to be able to get an insight, into that. Tracy, I'm just conscious of the time, and I'm so grateful for everything that you're giving me here. I did have one more question, maybe 2 questions for you. people listening to this might be thinking, gosh, I can, I feel inspired, and, I feel like I'm going to go and do something right now. And I like what I've heard you say that inspiration is like perfume, and you jump in the shower, it's going to come off, and you've got to reapply it again constantly if you want to smell so sweetly. I was
Yeah.
wondering what tips that you would have to say, how do we get people to start creating this unstoppable mindset?
Well, so I mean, people might look at me without my hands, without my legs, like all of my stages around the world totally canceled, and it's COVID, and she lives all by herself in this condo. It, you know, I have every excuse right now, like a lot of us in the world, right? The numbers are exponential, to have some anxiety at the very least, right?
Yes.
To be frustrated, right? And all of the support services for people with disabilities, those programs, those services, people coming in, and all of those things are ending. Like just basic eating and life needs, right?
Yes.
Are cut off. It's not just the isolation of companionship and the horrific fears of financial loss, or the loneliness of building relationships and finding a life partner, right? It's on top of all of that, there's also some basic shelter and care needs that are gone. And I have every single excuse of my entire life that nobody would judge me for possibly, being on welfare, for example,
Yeah.
or getting some assistance. Nobody would judge me. But I know, and what I don't know actually is I don't know what's going on in your listeners' worlds.
Yes.
Right? I don't know what pain and struggles, life and death they're facing, who's ill in themselves or their family, or the impact. Like, it's not just financial loss to themselves, it's fear for their children too, with a roof over their head because of that financial loss. Like, I do not know what's going on in your listeners' worlds, but I do know a little bit of tough love, like my mom gave me. When I live a life of no excuses, I live a life of no limits, right? No excuses, no limits. So the tough love, no excuses, even when you have realistic reasons, no excuses, no limits.
Yeah.
Right? And I joke, I spelled limitless with a V.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
With the B. Yeah.
limitless. I was born limitless.
Yes.
Right? I was born limitless, but the bigger secret of is not how I was born this way. The bigger secret is that you are born limitless too.
Yeah.
We are all born limitless. And when you said, is it because you were born without a disability, or do you think that's your personality that gave you this unstoppable, tough nature? And I said, well, that's a tough question, because I don't think you have to go out there and cut off a limb to be limitless, right?
Yes.
Rob is limitless too, right? We can all be no excuses, no limits.
Yes. And do you think that's beautiful? Well said. Do you think that people struggle so much because they place too many limiting beliefs on what's possible for them, and play, essentially like a victim, if you like? Oh, I'm not good enough to do that. That sounds great what Tracy did, but she's like she is because she was born that way, or Rob's that way because he's got a pink tie and looks powerful.
It secretly says Brooke Shields underneath.
Yeah, that's right. Do you think that's where it's coming from? It's that sense of the limits that people place on what they're capable of doing?
I think consciously or unconsciously, people need to disarm their limiting beliefs. And I know that you and me, we've got to continually do it too, right? I had to redo it during COVID, and I'm going to have to redo it today, right? And I have to redo it when the bills come in, right?
Yes.
We've got to redo it when reinventing my virtual business, and launching some new services and abilities because of the lack of stages, right? So we've got to also continue to disarm our limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And it's so funny, Rob. I spent a lot of my life where nobody wanted to be me. People on the street would, and still sometimes, not when I look like this, but you know, if I had just my ponytail and no makeup on and in sitting in a power chair without my legs on, especially when I go out without my legs on now, like if I go walk my dog on my stubbies instead of the long legs because they're not fitting, people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I can't imagine what I would do if I was you. It must be so hard. Like people don't want to be me.
Yeah.
But then people that listen in, they're kind of like, yeah, well, Tracy, you got all that going for you, right?
Yeah.
I'm not an athlete or an adventurer or a humanitarian or right. And then they kind of feel like that's a, well, I got a leg up. It's funny. I do have an artificial leg up. Yeah. And they kind of think that that's a bonus. Yeah. So I go the worst person to be on the planet to being, oh, well, that's a bit of a bonus for you. No wonder you're a famous speaker, right? Well, I know a lot of people with disabilities that would love to be earning an income as a speaker. It takes, being super diligent. It does take those 10,000 hours, right? Yeah. And it does take that investment in self to get that high performance speaking coach and high performance business coach and high performance athletic coach.
Yes.
It's so true. I've already talked myself out of your question. Can you re-ask?
No, it's all right. You've answered it well. You've answered it really well. Tracy, I want to thank you so much for your time this morning, your time, evening, my time. It's been really fantastic. And I know the last couple of years that we've both been over in LA at the same time. And I was so looking forward to this year. In fact, a short story, I was planning on coming to LA twice this year, obviously for the conference, but then I was taking my girls to Disneyland this year. Not anymore because we can't travel. We're not allowed out of the country. So hopefully next year. But each time we pass in LA, we say hello and whatever. But you're in so much demand that it's hard to meet up for time. So this is the longest conversation that we've had. So I'm very, very
like eye contact and connection, energy wise. But it's because the crowds, we have to hide. Next time we'll hide somewhere.
Yeah, in the corner somewhere. Yeah. Look, I'm sure that people would love to know how they could get to know more about you and what you do. And you've got your book in the back corner there, Unstoppable You. How can people grab a copy of your book? What's the best way that people can get in touch with you?
Well, so if people go to Unstoppable Tracy, right? And I like to joke, no hands and no legs, no extra parts. And that I spell my name the same way with no extra parts. There's no E. Everybody wants to put an E in my name. It's just Tracy.
Yeah,
right?
That's mum's fault, mum and dad's fault.
Mom and they forgot the letter.
I'm two B's. Often people only put one B. For me, I'm two B's.
Two B's. But you are so brilliant. They gave you an extra B for Bravo Rob, right? Yeah. I love it. Brilliant, Bravo Rob.
Yeah.
So, my mom didn't even give me a middle name. She's no extra parts in the body, no extra parts in Tracy, and I don't even have a middle name. So Tracy, Unstoppable Tracy. Or you go to Unstoppable You book.
Yeah.
And in a couple of days, maybe a week, so many people like you have been reaching out, Rob, and just like, the crowds in LA that are like, Tracy, and you and I, who have an authentic friendship, we can't connect in a more meaningful, longer conversation for dinner type of thing that is a struggle for us. That's happening now. In COVID, I'm getting an exponential outpouring and messages from people I know and I don't know on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and I'm Unstoppable Tracy on all of those. So what I want to do is, my book's a bestseller and it's like a $32 US online, but I'd like to gift it to the world, right? I want to do something during this pandemic for folks. Yeah, so beautiful. I'm going to gift a hard copy of my book, but I'm just this week figuring out the shipping and handling. I'm just somebody to help me ship it and handle it, but I'm going to cover the cost of the book and for folks. So I can't tell you unstoppableyobook.com just yet because I'm sorting out the shipping and handling.
Sure. But we'll be able to follow you on social media to see.
Yes, and you're going to see it launch.
Yes.
Or get your free download for now. Go to unstoppabletracy.com and share your email on my website, unstoppabletracy.com. And then when I have your email, I'll send you a free download right away. And then I have your email to get your address later when I can ship and handle the books. And it's like within the month. And I share a lot of the stories I shared today, but I think what's really important is that there's self-coaching questions.
Ah, nice.
So, right? So you can coach yourself and self-direct the unstoppable in you so that you're reapplying that perfume every day, and you listen to Rob and follow both of his podcasts so that you're reapplying that toughness so that it doesn't wash away. But that the other pieces for the life coaches in here, that you can also repurpose these questions for yourself and for your clients. So it's a tool for self and tool for, if it's your business, you can also repurpose it, either for yourself or your kids or your top level corporate executives. These are the questions that I used at Air Canada with Uber, and you can self-coach too.
Wonderful. That is, that's fantastic, Tracy. Now I have to put this back on. There we go. So in our final closing, thank you so much for today. This has been brilliant, Tracy. There'll be so much value that people are going to get out of today's call. Please make sure that you get Tracy's book. Stay in touch with Tracy. It's been beautiful speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. And we're going to go out with a bit of Akadaka. See you next time, Tracy.